Frederick Henry Royce was born in Alwalton, Northamptonshire in 1863, the youngest of 5 children whose parents, James and Mary Royce, ran a mill and small farm which stood on this site. Following his father's death in 1872, Fred was forced to seek work at the age of 9. When he was 14, the young Royce was able to start working as an apprentice to the Great Northern Railway Works in Peterborough. This is a Stirling locomotive of the type young Fred Royce would have worked on. He lodged with a Mr. Yarrow, who taught him to use hand and bench tools and a lathe. Then, after working for a firm of toolmakers in Leeds, Royce worked for Sir Hiram Maxim at the Electric Light and Power Company, initially in London and then in Liverpool. In 1884, when the firm collapsed, Royce invited his friend, Ernest Claremont, to join him in setting up F.H. Royce and Company, later renamed Royce Limited, in Cook Street, Manchester. The firm prospered, selling mainly small electrical items like bell sets, lamp holders, and switches. They later developed their range to include dynamos, switchboards, and electric cranes. From the early years, the importance of quality had formed the cornerstone of the Royce philosophy, and it was this pursuit of perfection that led him to improve his own car, a Decauville, and eventually to build a new car to meet his own high standards of quality and reliability. A corner of the Cook Street Works was set up to develop the first Royce car from the basic design of the Decauville, but using only the finest materials. This first car cost about £140. The Honourable Charles Stuart Rolls was born in 1877, the third son of Lord and Lady Langattock of Monmouth. Educated at Eton and Trinity College, Cambridge, Rolls graduated as an engineer. An enthusiastic and successful racing motorcyclist, his first motor car was a Peugeot, and he took part in many rallies, winning the Automobile Club 1,000-mile trial in 1900. His love of cars led him to set up a motor car sales firm, C.S. Rolls and Company, in 1902. Virtually all cars were imported at this time, and Rolls was disappointed that there were no good British cars to sell. The secretary of the Automobile Club, now the RAC, was Claude Johnson, and Rolls persuaded him to join his firm. Another club member was Henry Edmonds, a director of Royce Limited. Edmonds had one of Royce's early cars, and knowing that Rolls was keen to promote a British car, he arranged the meeting of Rolls and Royce, which took place in May 1904 at the Midland Hotel in Manchester. Rolls tested the car and was immediately impressed. An agreement was reached in the hotel dining room that C.S. Rolls and Company would sell all the cars Royce could build. The first simple, silent Rolls-Royce was advertised in the Autocar magazine in December 1904. The first batch of about 20 10-horsepower cars went into production, and these were the first cars to bear the now world-famous Grecian radiator design. In 1906, the Rolls-Royce Company was formed, and a range of models went on sale to the public. Driving a light 20, Charles Rolls won the Isle of Man Tourist Trophy race at an average speed of 39.3 miles an hour, a remarkable performance on the grueling circuit. Subsequently, again in a light 20, he broke the record for a drive from Monte Carlo to London in 37 hours, 30 minutes. He won a race in New York and came second in an event at Ormond Beach, Florida. In the same year, Claude Johnson, driving a 30-horsepower 6-litre 6-cylinder Rolls-Royce, competed in the Scottish reliability trial with success, losing no marks. Within this event, there was the Battle of the Cylinders, when the Rolls-Royce was compared with Captain Deasy's 4-cylinder Martini of similar cubic capacity. The Rolls-Royce won handsomely. In 1907, the fruits of cooperation between Royce, the engineer, and Rolls, the marketing expert, were seen in the announcement of the new 40-50 horsepower Rolls-Royce that set the seal of success on the company and was to become known as the best car in the world. Driven in the 1907 Scottish reliability trial by Claude Johnson, the car named the Silver Ghost, the now world-famous AX201, won a gold medal for its performance and continued to establish a new non-stop record of 14,371 miles, easily surpassing the previous record of 7,089 miles, the only involuntary stops arising from punctures. In 1908, Eric Platford, driving one of the rare Type 70 40-50s named Silver Rogue, gained a gold medal in the RAC 2,000 miles International Touring Car Trial. This model did not go into production, and the standard 40-50 became known as Silver Ghost, from the name of the original trials car, which is still in regular use, having covered well over 500,000 miles throughout the world. Business was good, and as the Cook Street factory was too small, Henry Royce, he no longer used the name Fred, designed and had built a new factory in Derby, which was completed in 1908 and opened by John Scott Montague, who later became the first Lord Montague of Bewley. Charles Rolls had interests other than motoring. He was a keen balloonist, and while in America on a sales trip, he met the Wright brothers. From that moment, flying became his main interest. Rolls was the first man to fly to France and back non-stop, and tragically, he became the first Englishman to be killed in a flying accident during a competition at Southbourne near Bournemouth in 1910. In 1911, in response to competition, a modified 40-50 Rolls-Royce undertook a non-stop run using top gear only from London to Edinburgh. The driving was entrusted to an experimental tester named Ernest Hives, who in 1950, as Lord Hives, became chairman of the company. The run was successfully completed at an average fuel consumption of 24.32 miles per gallon, following which the car was taken to Brooklands, where it achieved a maximum speed of 78.26 miles per hour with Hives and 3 passengers. Then, with this special bodywork, the same chassis exceeded 101 miles an hour on the track. The model was sold to the public as a more sporting 40-50 known as the London to Edinburgh. During this period, as a result of overwork and exhaustion, Royce became seriously ill. When he recovered, Claude Johnson arranged that he should live away from the works. In 1899, Royce had built Bray Cottage in Knutsford, Cheshire, some 15 miles from the Cook Street factory. After his illness, however, it was decided that summers would be spent in the south of England and winters in the south of France. In England, he lived at Crowborough and St. Margaret's Bay, while the Villa Mimosa at Le Canadelle became his winter home, complete with separate drawing office. At the end of the war, he moved to West Wittering in Sussex. Here at Elmstead, Royce and his small design team continued the work at which they excelled, and Elmstead remained the summer base until his death. Some owners had a tendency to fit mascots to their cars, and prompted by the flippancy of some of these, Royce agreed that a proper mascot should be designed. On the recommendation of John Scott Montague, a keen motorist and Rolls-Royce owner, Charles Sykes, a well-known artist and sculptor, created the Spirit of Ecstasy. It's said that the figure was inspired by Miss Eleanor Thornton, Montague's secretary. Internationally, the reputation of the company was increased by the performance of a team of modified 40-50s in the 1913 Austrian International Alpine Trials. The three works cars, known as Alpine Eagles, led by Hives, with a fourth car for James Radley, became the talk of the motoring press on account of their speed, hill climbing, and reliability. The outbreak of war in 1914 forced Royce to leave Le Canadelle and return to England. Production of the 4050 continued on a reduced scale, mainly for military use. The Ghost was found to be admirably suited as the basis for an armoured car. Only minor modifications were needed to carry an armoured body which, with armament, fuel and crew, weighed over 6 tons. These cars were used in every theatre of the war, perhaps most famously by Lawrence of Arabia, seen here entering Damascus. It was Lawrence who said, "A Rolls in the desert is above rubies." A report in the Times in 1916 said, "The armoured cars used in Egypt are all Rolls-Royce. Notwithstanding all the rough work they have done, there has been no engine breakdown. The cars have run over thousands of miles of roughest desert, and the complete absence of engine trouble is a triumph of British workmanship." Some of these cars were still in action in Libya as late as 1941. A serious problem facing the country during the First World War was the lack of a British aero engine. Under government pressure, Royce turned to the design of aero engines, and the Eagle was produced, and first ran in 1915 at the Derby factory. Other engines followed, the 6-cylinder Hawk and the V-12 Falcon, used extensively on the Bristol fighter. By the end of the war, the Condor was in use. These engines had an immense impact on the war, running on average for twice the hours between servicing than all other makes of engine. In 1919, Alcock and Brown made the first non-stop crossing of the Atlantic by air in a Vickers Vimy XRAF bomber powered by 2 Rolls-Royce Eagle engines. In the same year, Claude Johnson decided to build Rolls-Royce cars in America to meet the market demand, without the burden of freight costs and import duty. Rolls-Royce of America Incorporated was set up in 1921, and nearly 3,000 cars were made during the next 10 years. Some of the most beautiful coachwork designs ever seen on cars of this period were produced for Rolls-Royce Ghosts and Phantoms from the Springfield factory. To counter the drop in UK sales, Royce and Johnson agreed that a smaller, cheaper Rolls-Royce should be designed, and the result, a 20-horsepower car, codenamed Goshawk, became very popular. The 20, introduced in 1922, may easily be identified by the horizontal radiator shutters. The policy of producing a large and a small car concurrently continued until the outbreak of war in 1939. By 1925, the Ghost chassis had almost reached the limits of its development, and so, as no new chassis was yet available, the car was upgraded by the installation of a new overhead valve engine and christened the new Phantom, later known as the Phantom 1. In 1926, Claude Johnson died, literally burned out from overwork. The 20 and Phantom 1 were replaced in 1929 by the 2025 and the Phantom 2. Superb coachwork with modern styling clothed these fine chassis to produce some of the most elegant cars ever seen. In 1929, Royce was given the go-ahead to design a racing engine to be installed in the Supermarine S6 aircraft for that year's Schneider Trophy race. In 7 months, his R engine was developed from the 925 horsepower Buzzard, enabling Flight Lieutenant Waghorn to take the S6 to victory. Henry Royce's contribution to this great event and his many other achievements were recognized when he was dubbed a baronet in 1930. In the following year, an improved R engine was developed, but the race turned into a flyover for Britain. However, a Supermarine S6B aircraft, powered by a 2,530 horsepower R engine, took the world speed record at 407.5 miles an hour. It was in 1931 that the great firm of Bentley Motors went into liquidation and was bought by Rolls-Royce. This effectively scotched the rising competition from their 8-litre car and offered Rolls-Royce potential entry into a sporting market. In 1933, the 3.5-litre Bentley, the silent sports car, capable of over 90 miles an hour, was launched and became an immediate success. Since 1933, every Bentley car has been pure Rolls-Royce in terms of design and concept, adapting the style of the Bentley radiator and badge to make the best commercial use of W.O. Bentley's great sporting record. On the 22nd of April, 1933, Sir Henry Royce died. He left his engineering philosophy firmly entrenched in his successors. In 1936, a new model, the 2530, was derived from the 2025 with a larger bore engine and other changes. The Bentley was also updated and bored out to become the 4.25 litre. Royce's experience with multi-cylinder cars and aero engines was manifest in the production, also in 1936, of the V12-engined Phantom III. In the early 30s, the favoured sporting lines and lighter design touch of Park Ward had become popular, and when, in 1938, they were in financial trouble, Rolls-Royce took them over. 1939 saw the introduction of the last small horsepower car, the quiet and sophisticated 2530 Wraith. Numbers were limited, however, because production ceased the following year. Once again, the outbreak of war was to challenge the legend of Rolls-Royce, and the entire Derby works were turned over to production of the Merlin engine. Incidentally, the war also stopped the development of a new range of Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars. Before the war, the potential of the Merlin had been recognized, and in 1938, with Air Ministry funding, a factory to make Merlins had been established at Crewe, followed by a factory in Glasgow managed by Rolls-Royce, and one at Manchester managed by the Ford Motor Company. In America, the Packard Company in Detroit set up a Merlin production facility. In all, over 160,000 Merlins were produced, and not only did they play a key role in the Battle of Britain, but also in the subsequent massive air offensive against Germany. The Merlin changed the shape and structure of the Rolls-Royce company, making it predominantly an aero engine manufacturer. With the end of hostilities, Derby and part of the Glasgow factory remained on aero work, while Crewe became the centre of motor car manufacture, as it remains to this day. After the war, for mainly economic reasons, it was decided that for the first time Rolls-Royce would produce complete cars. The engine was a straight 6 of 4,257 cc's, and the body was to be pressed steel. The designer was Ivan Evenden. The first cars were Bentley. The company was keen to test the market reaction to their first complete cars, and so the Mark VI was launched. Demand, especially from America, however, was for a true Rolls-Royce, and so the Silver Dawn was produced. Sales boomed in America, and a new market emerged at home. Traditionally, chassis was still supplied on request to the few remaining coach builders, and many superb styles were fitted, mainly as the Silver Wraith, and then on the Silver Cloud, S-Series Bentley, and Phantom 4 and 5. The Phantom 4, perhaps the most exclusive Rolls-Royce ever made, was for royalty and heads of state only. No more than 18 were ever built, and one of these was scrapped after testing. Bodies were made by Mulliner, Hooper, This was a Sedanka de Ville, and an Arabian prince ordered this drophead from Franet of Paris. There were 2 other convertibles, and the rest were state limousines. 2 Phantom 4s, along with 2 Phantom 5s and 2 Phantom 6s, are in the possession of Her Majesty the Queen and are still in regular use. The Phantom 4 used a straight 8-cylinder engine previously used in an experimental car, a Bentley nicknamed the Scalded Cat, after an extremely fast test run. In 1955, the Silver Cloud and S1 Bentley were introduced, and although a few bodies were produced by Hooper, James Young, and the now combined H.J. Mulliner Park Ward, the majority of these cars were the standard steel saloons built by Rolls-Royce at Crewe. A new V8 engine design of 6,230 cc's was introduced. This fine, reliable and powerful unit was first used in the Silver Cloud 2 and Bentley S2, and with continual development, it is still in use in production cars 30 years on. Recognizing the general trends of automobile development, the Silver Cloud 3 and Bentley S3 were the last Rolls-Royce cars to use a separate chassis design, except for the Phantom 6, which is still hand-built to order at the Mulliner Park Ward factory in London. The new Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow and Bentley T-Series were launched in 1966 and became the most successful cars the company ever produced. The convertible, designed and built by Mulliner Park Ward, is still available today and is one of the most desirable touring cars in the world. When, in 1971, problems experienced by the aero engine division brought about the near bankruptcy of the company, due to state intervention, the car division was formed into a separate, independent organization called Rolls-Royce Motors Limited. The first event of the new company was the launch of the Corniche, available either as a fixed-head or drop-head coupe. Although similar to the earlier 2-door Silver Shadows, the new car had many technical advances, and in line with the company's policy of continual development and improvement, the latest cars incorporate a greater degree of sophistication than was imagined when the early Shadows were produced. The aero engine division was supported by government funding in order to maintain the development of gas turbine manufacture for civil and military applications, and continues trading as Rolls-Royce Limited. This company has now been privatized and remains in the forefront of gas turbine propulsion unit manufacture for marine, industrial and aircraft applications, very much maintaining the traditions of Sir Henry Royce himself. The Camargue was the first post-war Rolls-Royce to be styled outside the United Kingdom. Pininfarina of Italy had shown a Bentley coupe at an exhibition, but the Camargue, 1975 to 1987, was the only production vehicle not styled within the company. Many of the technical innovations of recent years were developed for this remarkable car. The world-beating Bentley Turbo is the result of a plan to produce a turbocharged version of the Camargue, sadly abandoned for marketing reasons. In 1980, after a run of 15 years and more than 1/3 of total production since 1904, the Silver Shadow was replaced by the Silver Spirit. The new car is dramatically different in terms of styling, but it retains the same engine and running gear as its predecessors. The Bentley version of the new car was the Mulsanne, and in 1982, the Turbo was announced at the Geneva Motor Show. In 1984, the company decided to revive the Bentley marque, and the Bentley 8 and Continental convertible were released. In 1985, Rolls-Royce produced their 100,000th car. This centenary car was a Silver Spur, and a special limited edition of 25 cars were produced to commemorate the achievement. Rolls-Royce continues to thrive, now as Rolls-Royce Motor Cars Limited, a part of the Vickers group of companies, still producing the finest cars in the world, retaining the philosophy of engineering excellence laid down by Sir Henry Royce so long ago and never forgotten. Rolls-Royce, the pride of Britain.